from here I saw some people sitting differently today, and there are many new faces who've come for this final day of Khatam Band. And yesterday we spoke about the warfare, the British era, the imperial forces and the state forces. But today, when I speak about the Bikaner house and the location that we are sitting, I'm going to talk about it differently. From yesterday, we spoke about why Bikaner house was built and why princely houses were built around the India Gate, and with reference to the Viceroy's house, which is now the presidential house. And they would do their own business as you come to the embassies. So this was like embassies coming to India, where Maharajas would come and park themselves to transact business with the Viceroy. But before the Lytton's Delhi was built, a similar kind of arrangement was there at the Red Fort. And what represented the India Gate, which is a crossroad, was Chandni Chowk. Now take your mind back when New Delhi, Lytton's Delhi wasn't there, and the entire power used to be seated at the Red Fort. And Chandni Chowk was the place which was at the crossroads where the normal people came together and they did the business or whatever. So it is same symbol as now we have, which is India Gate. Now taking our mind back, we spoke about different princely states, and we also started talking about how the princely states came to being. The British conquered from the west, came to the east, and they realized that the other power was also there in India. The Portuguese were there, the French were there, but they did whatever they did, but the British succeeded. But the last bastion for the British to break was Maharaja Ranjit Singh's empire. So they fought the first Sikh war, Anglo-Sikh war, the second Anglo-Sikh war, and then ultimately what happened to it, we will talk about it. But there is a background to why Maharaja Ranjit Singh took over and created a Khalsa empire. There's a background to the Sikh history, which also we will slowly discover as we go along discussing the Raja Ranjit Singh's valor. So we have on the stage with me Iqbal Malhotra, who's a historian. He's also a filmmaker. He's a writer. He's also a speaker. He speaks at a number of platforms. And also we have with us Vikram Sodhi Sahab, who actually comes from Anandpur Sahab. And Anandpur Sahab is a separate reference point away from Maharaja Ranjit Singh. So when you talk about the two reference points, Maharaja Ranjit Singh at Lahore, and then later on the Sikh tradition and all, which started originally from Golden Temple, Amritsar, and then the seat of power slowly shifted and how they came to Anandpur Sahib, and ultimately came down to what we talk about Maharaja Ranjit Singh. So we will talk about Maharaja Ranjit Singh first, and then we will go back and trace the history as to how the rich valor and traditions came up. So Iqbal, can you talk about Maharaja Ranjit Singh and Kohinoor? Is it Kohinoor which made Maharaja Ranjit Singh famous, or it was the other way around?
Thank you, General Saab. I think the most interesting thing about Maharaja Ranjit Singh was if you actually compare him to Alexander the Great. Now, Alexander conquered most of the Punjab. I think it was about 326 or 324 BC. And Maharaja Ranjit Singh built his kingdom around that same area. They were both leaders who led their men from the front, and they were not armchair generals or emperors. And they were also very magnanimous individuals. Magnanimous in the sense that they reinstated their foes and their opponents whom they defeated in battle, and handed the reins of their lost empires back to them. And the third thing is that they were both very fond of horses. Alexander's horse Bucephalus died somewhere along the banks of the Chenab, and he built a shrine and a memorial to him. And Maharaja Ranjit Singh's a horse called Leela even wore the Kohinoor diamond at some point of time during her life, and when she died, she had a grand cremation. So I think what historians have ignored has been the singular contribution of Maharaja Ranjit Singh as a colossus who strode or rather straddled the Indian subcontinent during the 19th century. He kept invasions from the north at bay. He secured control over the Khyber Pass, and he never transgressed the Satluj River, which became the unofficial boundary between him and the British Empire. And the British were quite content to let him look after the northern frontiers and expand his empire, which went up almost to China and Persia. So the Kohinoor diamond, which he had, he secured control over, very interestingly, came into his hands when he rescued Shuja Shah, who was this Afghan, deposed Afghan king, from the clutches of the governor of Kashmir, who was also an Afghan, called Ata Muhammad. And Shuja Shah's wife came to Maharaja Ranjit Singh and asked for his help, and said that if he helped her secure the release of her husband from the dungeons in Srinagar, then they would hand over the Kohinoor diamond to him. And he was very intrigued by the story of the Kohinoor diamond because it had been, I think, looted by Alauddin Khilji, and it had then traveled to Iran, and then came back to the Mughals, and then when Nadir Shah plundered Delhi, it went back to Iran, and then from there Ahmad Shah Abdali got hold of it, and that's how it came into the hands of his grandson Shuja Shah. And after securing the release of Shuja Shah from Kashmir, his wife and he both demurred, and they tried not to hand over the Kohinoor diamond to Maharaja Ranjit Singh, but he secured it. And the interesting thing is that he regarded this diamond as part of India's heritage. And he was not the owner of the diamond, but he was the custodian of the diamond. And as per his will, he had left it to, I think it was Puri, the temple of Puri in eastern India and Odisha, because he felt it was part of the continuity of the heritage of Indian civilization. But then we know that because of the treachery of Gulab Singh and the treachery of Colonel Lawrence, that the diamond landed up in the crown of Queen Victoria, and today it adorns the crown of King Charles. So I think that's a bit of the, very briefly, something about Maharaja Ranjit Singh and the Kohinoor diamond.
Thank you, Iqbal. Talking about the Sikh history, really speaking, it did not start with Sikhs being a martial race, or they didn't have to pick up arms. They were actually those, who had valued knowledge. Meaning of a Sikh is somebody who learns, and he goes to a guru, and guru sits in a gurudwara. So there is a relationship between a teacher and a student. But slowly, as the gurus evolved from one gaddi to another gaddi, we realized that for some reason that we are going to talk about, that Sikhs became known for being martial. Now, again, talking about India Gate, and the earlier, form of India Gate was Chandni Chowk. Something happened at Chandni Chowk, or something happened before that, that Sikhs turned out to be a martial community who actually had to build a military, such as later on became forces of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. If the Sikhs had not picked up swords and arms at that time, Maharaja Ranjit Singh may not have possibly come up maybe in this form, or maybe history would have been very different. So let's trace back as to how the Sikhs actually became martial. So we have, a person of prominence, Vikramjit Sodhi Saab. He comes from Anandpur Saab. And really speaking, the birth of the Khalsa Panth happened at Anandpur Saab. So it will be very interesting to talk to him that how did the Sikhs become martial?
Thank you, General Saab. No, it's a very interesting subject, and I'm glad you mentioned and you want to bring it into prominence. The evolution of the Sikh martial spirit is something that is shrouded in mystery at this point of time. People don't talk about it, and I don't know why they don't talk about it, because eventually the Sikhs did become a martial race and were recognized as such, and had fought very valiantly against the Mughal Empire, secured their demise, and even raised the flag of the Khalsa on the Red Fort. So now that is the latter part, and I'm glad you want to go back to the very beginning, the fountainhead. Well, I would say the transformation into a martial people started with Guru Hargobind Sahib, actually, to be very truthful, because after the martyrdom of his father, Guru Arjan, Guru Hargobind, the sixth Guru of the Sikhs, was imprisoned at that time in Gwalior Fort. And when he came out of prison, that is the time he adopted the concept of Miri Piri, wearing the two swords, one of temporal power and one of spiritual power. So that was in a sense, it was the declaration of independence by the Sikhs. So in our ethos, that was the time when the Guru gave the Sikhs a meaning way beyond that of being spiritual seekers of knowledge, because the Sikh, like you rightly said, are seekers, disciples, seekers of knowledge. So that was the time when the transformation was formalized. Guru Nanak also spoke against Babur very, very strongly. Everybody thinks that Guru Nanak was a pacifist. He wasn't. He raised his voice against Babur. It's just that he didn't have a military force at his disposal to militarily oppose Babur. When Babur came to India and did atrocities, that was the time the first cry for independence was started by Guru Nanak, and subsequently formalized during the sixth Guru time, during Hargobind Sahib time. And by wearing the Miri Piri swords, the two swords, and establishing the Akal Takht, which is basically the Sikhs owed allegiance to God, Akal. So you're transforming the whole. You don't owe allegiance to a king or to a sovereign. The right to bear arms is a very interesting thing that you might want to understand. The right to bear arms is normally granted by the government of the time, normally a sovereign. So the sovereign gives you the right to bear arms, and the same tradition is carried on till today. Even today, when you want to apply for a license, you go to the government. You ask the government to give you a license to bear arms. But at that time, it was a declaration of independence from sovereignty. So the Sikh became sovereign. And in order to become sovereign, you had the right to bear arms, and that right to bear arms was given to you by God, by the Akal Purukh. So that declaration is embodied in the Akal Takht, and in the theology of the Sikhs, it came down into the mental breakup of the Sikhs. So that's the very beginning.
Thank you, Vikram. I'm going to talk about two things, but maybe a little later. The practice of Miri Piri is also seen in Golden Temple, which was built even before the sixth Guru. And at some point, Guru Gobind Singh said, when all other means fail, sword is the only answer. I would want to understand more which were the other means that he had in mind, or what are the other means that he was talking about. But also in the audience, my friend has just walked in, Harinder Sikka Sahib. He's a co-spirit of mine. He's a naval officer, a polo player. I'm going to invite him to come and join us on the stage. And then, of course, when we have a discourse, then I will talk more about Harinder Sikka. I think he's a public figure. He's a known orator. We will talk about him and about his movie that he made, which is a biopic on Guru Nanak Maharaj. So we will go back to the understanding of Miri Piri and why Miri Piri was not practiced during Guru Nanak Dev's time, but what was necessity and what were the other means that we are talking about.
You see, the first aspect or the first means that Guru Nanak was obliged to follow was the means of communication, dialogue, samvad. Discussion was encouraged by him. So that's why he became, he went all over the country and many parts of the world, basically to engage people, to engage them, to draw them into discussion, to bring together a feeling of oneness, and to bring the realization that Ik Onkar, there is one God, and He has many manifestations. And each one of us is free to follow the path that we desire, but that would be that. So I would say the dialogue and the invitation for a deeper discussion was the first means before, of course, engaging in confrontation.
Thank you, Vikram. Very interesting. Ek Omkar. Harinder, that you've come here, I hope your father is a bit better. He was not too well. And, Ang Sang Sahay is something which Manjeet Bhullar carries as a motto. And we hope that he's going to fully recover very quickly. I would ask you to add, from Ek Omkar, what were the other things that Guru Nanak brought to enlighten the people of not only India, but I think he went beyond the journeys of Guru Nanak. What did he carry? Did he carry Ek Omkar, or did he carry more such teachings which are even relevant today? And of course, later on when the Sikhs turned more martial, of course, certain things changed, and we will talk about it a little later.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Ran a little late. Some concerns at home. I'm not a movie maker. I have absolutely no idea of writing books, stories. In my life, these things have happened because of flukes. So one fine day in 2010, when we moved to a new house, we said I'd like to make a movie out of Guru Nanak's teachings. Trust me, entire Akali Dal were against that this is not going to happen. That is where I tested my so-called bravado first time. The movie was made on all these Badal groups, and Mr. Badal in person came home. He's very good, very good, very good. We want distribution rights. I'm saying in public domain. And this is where I was tested in how. While making this film, I suddenly decided that we will not use digital cameras, we'll use film, Kodak film. Very difficult to obtain because things are moving to digital, and very difficult to clean them up. So you think you have seen miracles in life, you have heard miracles in life, I've recorded them on camera. So it was very difficult for the SGPC and the Akal Takht and the Badals to directly say no. So I got approvals from them in writing. But those miracles that happened with me, I knew that there is something called God. If my watch has a maker, there is a body also which has a maker. But while making this, while stepping into the path laid by Guru Nanak, I learnt one thing, that he strictly said that caste, creed, religion has no meaning. If you are worshipping to one Almighty God, in whichever format. That's what matters. Nothing else matters. And if you do some karma in return, you don't need to say prayers. That short little prayer, Ekamkar, Japji Sahib, is good enough. That covers everything. It was not an easy task. It was demanding. It took me 5 years to complete. And at each station, at each beat, Nubra Valley in all the way in Leh Ladakh, or down the line to Orissa or Gujarat, wherever we went, a novice in me was facing challenges. But this first very incident when this film was begun at Firozpur, Mulanpur, we knew that this can be made. So it's not that I was helped because I was a Sikh. There is nothing called a Sikh if you do not believe in God. By simply wearing a turban or a kirpan, if you become a Sikh, then all those Bhaijis sitting in Harinder Sahib would be sitting in Guru Nanak's lap. That lessons one after the other when I learnt and I made this film, I was a different person by the time I came out. I was warned, and this is what bravado is all about or stupidity all about. The line is very thin anyhow. So when I said that no, the film will be released, you can do what you like, the film was banned. After censor's approval, after, Harinder Sahib is not the Harinder Sahib what it used to be. It's a commercial business out there, and you tell them that this is a commercial business out there. Guru Nanak never told you to do this. Neither did Guru Gobind Singh Ji. But the film was banned. And still I ran the film. 400 cinema halls across globe. And running pretty well.
Harinder, I'm going to come to this. You've actually made a very strong point here. But I think when we talk about our first Guru, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, there is much more in him that he taught the people. And I think there is so much that is relevant. I'm very glad that we have amidst us a very well-known Sikh who works for the cause of Sikhs today. We have with us Padam Shri Vikram Sahni Sahab. He is a sitting member of Rajya Sabha in the Parliament. He is also the head of the International World Punjabi Organization. And he does a lot of work, not only for Punjab, but I think for humanity at large. We have been discussing about, Sikhism, and then we also saw how it became martial, and going back and saw in the history, they were not martial first, and slowly there was a need to become martial. So I would like you to please talk about Sikhism, how you see it, and how would you want the world to look at it, because you are actually global as far as talking about Sikhism is concerned, and then we will come back to where Sikka Sahib had brought us to.
Thank you, General Pannu. I think Sikhism started with a unifying force, which is the need of the hour. As we all know, Guru Nanak Dev Ji was accompanied by Bhai Bala and Mardana, and he traversed through up to Baghdad, Saudi, Nepal. We have the Sikh Museum at Bangla Sahib, which you should visit, and we have portrayed there. Then, through the evolution of the process, I think it was started with the Shri Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji, who set up the Miri and Piri, as we call the two swords, Shri Akal Takht Sahib, the temporal power, Bhakti and Shakti, what we call, which was then culminated by Sahib Shri Guru Gobind Singh Ji, who said, गिद्दड़ों से मैं शेर बनाऊं, चिड़ियों से मैं बाज लड़ाऊं, 1.25 लाख से एक लड़ाऊं, तब है गोविंद सिंह नाम कहां. That was the transformation, and that was required to infuse the spirit of chivalry, of self-respect, of self-determination, of fighting against the oppression. And I think from there on, this journey started, and we have seen the descent of Sher-e-Punjab Maharaja Ranjit Singh, Hari Singh Nalwa, who I think defined the northwest frontier of the Indian thing. Even Maharaja Ranjit Singh Sheikh Baswan furled the Kesari flag on Kabul, and we know what's going on there now with the Talibans. So, and then of course, who knows better than all the generals here and the army veterans here, the Battle of Saragadi, where Victoria Cross was awarded, and we have Kesari movie and Chillianwala battle, and how Sikhs became part of the World War. About 80,000, I think, odd Sikhs laid their lives, and although we were 2%, but I'm told, if I'm not wrong, that 22% of the British Indian Army had Sikhs. So that is the piety and valor, the kind of inculcation which Gurus inculcated, and that is manifested. Of course, we had Bhagat Singh, Kartar Singh Saraba, Shaheed Udham Singh, and I think during on Kargil war and till today in Galwan Valley or wherever borders, our Sikh youth, our Sikh yodhas are laying down their lives like Dehe Shiva, Var Mohe Ehe Shubh, Karmante Kabhu na Taru, na Taru Arsyon jab jaye laru, निश्चय कर अपनी जीत करूं, जब आव की औद निधान बने, अत हिरण में तब जूझ मरूं. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very inspiring. Really, you took us to a point where anybody given an order would actually go and start fighting in the support of the downtrodden, because that is exactly what you've said. Iqbal, you were talking about Raja Ranjit Singh. How did he build this kind of an empire? How did he get Dogras, and how did he get the Pathans and the Muslims all put together? And I think the size of the empire went right up to Tibet and, Khyber Pass. How did he expand, and how did he manage his affairs? Was it because he was inspired by the traditions of the Guru Gobind Singh, or was he an administrator, or was there some other thing which was driving him?
Actually, the most interesting thing about Maharaja Ranjit Singh was his humility. When he conquered Amritsar in 1802, he didn't go to the Harinder Sahib as a general or as an emperor, but he went as a disciple, and he went with utmost humility. So, a humble man who was also very perceptive, and a man who recognized the limitations of his power, and also recognized the need to build alliances. And most of all, because of what Sikhism teaches, that you have to be secular in your outlook. The Punjab at that time had a Muslim population of 50%, 42% were Hindus, and 7% were Sikhs. And yet he extended his power. And he was helped by people along his journey. I think his mother-in-law from his first wife, from his first marriage, she came to his assistance when he conquered Lahore, and then he conquered Attock, he conquered Multan. He used the cannon of Ahmad Shah Abdali, the famous Zamzama cannon, to train it on the walls of the Multan fort. And from Multan, then he conquered Kashmir, and after Kashmir, he conquered Peshawar. And at the time of his death, the empire was expanding into Ladakh, Gilgit, Baltistan. And following his death in 1938, the Sikh empire extended right up to Gartok in Tibet, when General Joravar Singh died because his logistics failed him. And I think it was in Maharaja Ranjit Singh's own consciousness that he wanted to also secure the Lake Mansarovar and Mount Kailash, because all the headwaters of the Indus and the Satluj and the Ganga all come from there. So that was traditionally Indian land, and I think till about 1950 the Principality of Minsar, near about 15 to 20 kilometers from Lake Mansarovar, used to pay land revenue to the Maharaja of Kashmir. And Kashmir was a vassal state of the Sikh Empire. So I think what Maharaja Ranjit Singh really realized was that he was never foolhardy. He knew the British were going to rule India at some stage, and he tried his best to keep them at bay, and he expanded his empire northwards. He never crossed the Satluj River. He regarded that to be the sacrosanct boundary between him and the British, and the British also respected him. I think if the British hadn't entered India, he would have expanded southward, he would have conquered Sindh, and he would have gained access to the Arabian Sea. And that would have made the Punjab into a separate country, in the sense that it was, it still has great soil, it has great people, it has rivers, it had all the ingredients of a great nation. But unfortunately, because of so many factors that occurred following his demise and the betrayal and treachery of the people who then wiped out his descendants, that the empire then crumbled, and the British were able to vanquish their last and greatest enemy in India. So I think what we can learn from this is that his secular outlook, his humility, and his perceptiveness in building alliances and recognizing how you need to conduct statecraft and how you need to rule your people, which was a very and still is a very diverse land, was some of the ingredients that enabled him to be a success in his life.
Thank you, Iqbal. You brought something that set me thinking about Sindh. Actually, Sindhis also worship Guru Nanak. And I think it is not that Sikh is in a shape where he has a turban like I have and a beard. But I think there are Sikhs of many kinds. It is just that because later on they got into a certain way of recognition, everybody started looking at Sikh as somebody who looks in a particular manner. So Harinder, is there something that you have in your mind that beyond people who look like me and you, who are the Sikhs that we need to talk about, the followers of Guru Nanak?
See what Guru Nanak did, that's what I was trying to explain through my movie which I learned. I'll only share with you what I've experienced firsthand. He did not believe in caste, creed and religion. What did Guru Gobind Singh Ji do? He selected Panj Pyaras. They came from Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Haryana, Lahore and so on and so forth, and he made them Sikhs, and then became a Sikh himself at their hands. There was no difference between Hindus and Sikhs. There ought not to be a difference between Hindus and Sikhs. A martial race was created, and that race was humble and fighter, and not to bow down. And that is how the Battle of Saragari took place, where 21 Sikhs fought. But the Sikhs, when did it become a total identity by itself, wrongfully, is not understandable to us. One thing is for sure, that Master Tara Singh, when he was given that, I'm slightly diverting, but it's important, was when B.R. Ambedkar Sahab said that this is so much of scheduled caste, scheduled tribe with us, accept them into Sikh fold and there will be no problem in left. Master Tara Singh refused for whatever reasons. Had that happened, we would have had a very formidable force. Even now, when there is a problem on the border, the Sikhs go on saying, Jo bole so nihal, the fight is there. We have intentionally, very intentionally suppressed this part. All that I'm saying to you is that there is no difference between you and me, but by bearing a turban, we do not become Sikhs till we act as one. Follow the teachings. Follow what be it Guru Nanak Ji or Guru Gobind Singh Ji or his sons taught us. It is something that we are diverting, and we have made it a separate sect. And this is happening in very dramatic fashion today. Money matters, not Sikhi. And that is where we are going wrong.
Yeah, thank you. You explained it very well. Sodhi Saab, we spoke about Chandni Chowk. And we also have some Gurdwaras here. And Sahney Saab spoke about Bangla Saab Gurdwara. But we also know that there is Sees Ganj Saab and there is Rakab Ganj Saab Gurdwara. So if you look at Chandni Chowk, the way the whole Sikhism slowly, through Miri Piri and understanding of rights and wrongs, and ultimately then you decide that, hey, listen, you have to pick up a sword and decide. How did this transition happen? What happened in Chandni Chowk and why did it happen? What was the cause? What was so terrible that happened? Why it could not be stopped? Who was the one who actually started it and how did it end and what was the impact of it?
Very interesting. You see, we are talking about a period when the Mughal Empire was at its peak during the reign of Aurangzeb. They had the maximum territory and the maximum revenue. It was probably one of the richest countries in the world with the largest GDP. I think Iqbal can bear that out. He's a man of figures. But because during that period, the Mughal Empire was preeminent. There was no challenge to it, in effect. So, a lot depends upon how the ruler behaves. And during that time, the ruler was Aurangzeb. And he was drawn to Islamization of the nation. So that was one of his agendas, I would say, one of his desires as the ruler. So during that period, there was a desire by the powers, that be the government, to convert as many people of the indigenous Hindu populations into Islam. And how do you do that? Now, even today we realize that by providing employment, by providing patronage, by providing opportunity, you can influence people. So during that period, the royal edicts came out that patronage would be withdrawn, employment would be withdrawn to you if you did not convert. So the higher positions in court and in government were being reserved for people who had converted or were from the Islamic faith. Now, it's very interesting that during that period, there was an attack on the Hindu seminaries, in a sense that the Kashmiri Pandits came under an attack to be converted. And they felt that they were now under too much of pressure from the state. And they, in their wisdom, went and prayed at the shrine at Amarnath and worshipped Lord Shiva. And one of the devotees, it is believed, I mean, this is one of the beliefs. One of the devotees had a dream, and in the dream he saw Shiva. And Shiva said to the devotee that go to Anandpur Sahib and meet the 9th master of the Sikhs, and he will be able to help you. So, this delegation led by Pandit Kriparam, a 500 strong delegation, I believe, came to Anandpur Sahib. And Anandpur Sahib, incidentally, was where I was born. So my background links up with that. But he came with a delegation and he came to Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib's darbar, and he said that we need you to intercede with the Mughal Empire and to stop forcible conversion and to allow us to follow our worship. So Guru Sahib at that point felt that perhaps this was the need of the times. And I think he was a very deep thinking man, and he realized that certain sacrifices needed to be made in order to achieve the end of suppression and oppression. So he decided to embark on the journey to Delhi. He was arrested in Ropar, imprisoned in Sirand, spent 40 days there, transported to Delhi, and his 3 companions were tortured and executed, put to death before him. Bhai Matidas was sawn with an ara into pieces. Bhai Satidas was burnt alive. And Bhai Diyala was put into a pot of boiling water. All these things were done to encourage the Guru to convert, or to encourage him to accept. But when the Guru did not accept, then I think the only option left was to behead him, and that, to a large extent, had a very big impression on the mind of his young son, Guru Gobind Singh, who was still in Anandpur Sahib. So by the time the Guru's cease came to Anandpur Sahib, that's another story, he had more or less decided and had started working on the concept of a formal declaration of independence. And that came through in the formation of the Khalsa Panth.
Excellent. What a story, what history we have seen sitting where we are sitting in Delhi, and everything happened around here. This is the seat of power. Before we get down to saluting the soldier and saluting the Sikh soldier as we are doing at the moment, we shall very soon have a Salute magazine come up, and I will request Jagat to do the honors along with Sahney Saab and us. But before I wind up, because I've just got a parchi to say to wind up, but I think what is more important is I want Sahney Saab to please explain to us what is Jagat the Mama Bajio. How did the Sikh valor come to a point after what has just been described? And if you can tell us about Jagat the Mama Bajio.
Gagan the Mama.
Gagan the Mama.
Gagan the Mama Bajio. सूरा सो पहचानिए जो लड़े दीन के हेत. It started saying, सूरा सो पहचानिए जो लड़े दीन के हेत, पुरजा पुरजा कट मरे कभू न छाड़े खेत. So I'll start from where Sodhi Sahib left. After the Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji's great martyrdom, then Shri Guru Gobind Singh Ji, as he was said, again a unifying force. You know, 5 Panch Pyaras, how they came, the time is not permitting, but an inculcation of chivalry, inculcation of self-respect, self-determination, fighting against oppression, that created the Khalsa, the pure. But then, as our friend have narrated, that with the decay, with the treachery, Ranjit, Maharaja Ranjit Singh, how the Punjab, what was Punjab of Maharaja Ranjit Singh? Again from chivalry, he acquired Kohinoor. It was again act of chivalry, Kashmir to Sindh. And he said it could have been part of more enlarged Punjab. But Ranjit Singh jo ਜਿੱਤ ਦਾ ਅੱਜ ਜਿੱਤ ਕੇ ਵੀ ਹਾਰਿਆ ਤੇ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਖੁਦਗਰਜ਼ੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਮਾਰਿਆ. A friend was saying. Lastly, I would just end, because time is over, that we have discussed the historical perspective, but the onus is on all of us sitting here, luminaries, and especially army veterans like General Pannu and Manjeet Bhullarji and everybody here, to save our Punjab, to save our youth. Whether you give them, Punjab is passing through very turbulent times. I don't want to get into agrarian crisis and drugs and lack of jobs, investment, and the governments at not seeing eye to eye with each other. But I think onus is on all of us. And above all, as he was saying, the Sikh educational institutions are decaying. As a chairman of Delhi Sikh Education Council, I had all the lieutenant generals. We gave one institution to everybody. That model worked. I still believe that SGPC, DGPC should hand over these schools, one school to one lieutenant general or whatever. देखो फिर कितना अपना होता है. Therefore, these historical perspective learnings from that, we should do something in the present to save our generations. That is what I would like to submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Sahney Saab. You were pointing at Harinder and Jagat, if you have the magazine ready, by the time the magazine comes, I will just pass the mic around, just in case we have closing remarks. I start with Harinder and then we'll go across by the time the magazine will be here.
I left Navy in 93, 99 when Kargil took place, I went back as an embedded journalist and wrote a story called Calling Sehmat that later on became Razi. But that lady told me, don't make it on me, make it on Guru Nanak. And a Kashmiri Muslim woman taught me what was Guru Nanak. So this caste, and when this film was made and it was going to Cannes and Los Angeles and we were running short of funds, one gentleman, a Sindhi from London, chief of owns a company called Vita Biotics, he signs me a check of £100,000. He says, use this for promotion. I had to regret it because I had promised Sehmat I will not. But this is exactly what I am saying. Guru Nanak did not make religion. He made Sikhism as a way of life. If 12,600 villages in Punjab are drugged, then the responsibility was those in power. Started with Badals. Thank you very much.
Well, I think that the decay of institutions, the changes that have taken place in society, a lot of these has been accelerated during this period, during our lifetimes. So there is a large debt that we owe to the future generations in making amends. So each of us need to introspect and see how we can make India a better country, how we can inculcate values that will be followed by the coming generations. And that, I think, is something that we should all introspect and think about and find ways where each of us can contribute in changing the narrative and creating a narrative which is a narrative focused on the future, focused on the youth and focused on our institutions and focused on ways in which we can strengthen what we call Paisarik Sanj, which is universal brotherhood.
Sahney sir.
I think I've already concluded that we need to preserve our heritage, our rich cultural heritage. I would encourage, we have set up a Guru Tegh Bahadur holographic auditorium at Gurdwara Rakabganj, just opposite Parliament House. It's a 55-minute show, runs every day 5:30 to 6:30. It's for culture. And then we need to embrace our youth, give them opportunities, excel our Sikh educational institutions, which once upon a time was center of learning. And we all are from Punjab, and each Punjabi does well, but when he's provided a conducive environment to flourish, to give a dynamic display of his talents, but unfortunately, why not in Punjab, our land of forefathers? Thank you.
Thank you very much. All that is left for me is to thank my, very esteemed discussants here with me on a very, very historical and important subject of valor. And I think when we talk about, saluting a soldier, I think here we all talking about the valor, and in many forms that valor comes to defend a nation. May I request Jagatbi to please do the honors for Salute Magazine and talk about the future of it.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed an honor and privilege for me to be talking to you today about the Salute Magazine. And now, most of you would have heard of the magazine. Some of you would have read it. This magazine was started about 17 years ago, and it is published by a close friend of all of us called Maruf Raza. I have happened to be the editor of this magazine for the past year. So Pannu is a corporate of Maruf, and we've all worked together on this magazine. Now, the original name of the magazine is Salute to the Soldier, but generally it's known as the Salute, and it's got a readership of about 50,000 people, and it's available on the website also, and it's circulated to various units and formations in India, all over India, and as well as read by very many individuals. And it talks about the defense perspective, about geostrategy, India's military strategy covering the Army, Navy and Air Force, as well as talks about the issues relating to welfare of the soldiers, the issues of pay and pensions. It covers books, reviews of books written about various battles, various valor, And this issue, which I am, requesting the Honorable MP, Mr. Vikramjit Sahney, to release today, has been devoted to the Great World War, that is the World War I and the World War II, and the role of the Indian soldiers in this period. And as we all know, and as we were talked about yesterday, that it is not the Indian Army only, but it was the armies of India that fought at that time. So it was the British Indian Army at that time, as well as the state forces armies that participated in this war. And we've covered a lot of this. And since we've been talking of Sikhism and the contribution of the Sikh soldiers, you'll be happy to see that there's a picture of the Guru Granth Sahib being carried into battle by the soldiers. And that's a remarkable photograph which we've got from the USI archive. So you must see that. And sir, may I request you to kindly release this magazine.